Hi, and welcome to another edition of the MSDW podcast. I'm your host, Jason Gumpert, editor of msdynamicsworld.com.
And I'm Dan Morneau, assistant editor at msdynamicsworld.com.
Today's guest is Andrew King, managing director at WebSan Solutions. WebSan is a Microsoft partner, and they built themselves as the largest hosting provider for Microsoft Dynamics in Canada. Let's get started. Andrew, welcome to the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Nice to meet you and Dan.
You've been with WebSan for almost a decade now, but you've had other experiences in your professional life too. Can you tell us a little more about your background and your time at WebSan?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my personal background, my degree is ironically in chemical engineering, which has very little to do with what I do today. But I actually got into IT very early in my career. I spent 9 years actually doing SAP consulting, of all things. And then was with a company called Pitney Bowes that did postage meters and ran a bunch of supply chain operations for them. And then joined WebSan in 2006 and 2007 to kind of take it in a bit of a different direction. We hadn't gotten into the Microsoft space back then. We kind of got into Microsoft, I think it was 2008, really with on-premise GP, got into hosting early in 2009, and really haven't looked back since. And now we're doing Dynamics GP hosted and on-premise. We're doing Dynamics Nav as a managed service with Microsoft. We're doing Office 365. And CRM, both hosted CRM and CRM online as well. So for many years, we were sort of the go-to company as far as hosting services in Canada because Microsoft didn't have data centers for CRM, GP, etc.
All right, and what I know from reading some of the things you've been writing over the last year or two is you spend a lot of time thinking about implementations these days, ERP implementations, ERP and CRM together, as well as the implications of hosting. Is there a typical WebSan implementation today?
I wish. Sometimes. It really depends, obviously, on what the customer wants. I've always said that the out-of-the-box solution for any ERP is somewhat of a unicorn. It doesn't really exist, no matter how you try to package it or, frankly, even how down market you try to go. So our focus mainly in the GP world is really professional services industries, software companies, consulting agencies, architects, engineers, etc., because we've got actually a lot of intellectual property around web-based time and expense systems. When it comes to CRM, we've got a lot of different flavors because depending on what the company actually sells or our clients actually sell, most of them want some sort of solution that's unique to them in CRM, and obviously integrating that with the accounting package is critical. So that's a huge advantage both with Nav and GP in integrating CRM to those solutions and being able to leverage data and not have to repeat yourselves, right?
And you talked about picking up the cloud very early. How has cloud-based software delivery and implementation and decisions to purchase, I guess, on the customer side changed the way you engage with clients as a Microsoft partner?
So I would say, and I tell people this, somewhere around 75% of the clients that we have, and we have hundreds now, literally I've never met, and I'm responsible for sales in the company. So fundamentally, it changes the way you sell, it changes the way you market, and implementation, you need to find resources that work for you that are comfortable, similar to this podcast, talking to people over the internet and not really meeting face-to-face. We do a ton of remote consulting, a ton of remote support, and I even joke with, we're located in Toronto, so I joke with our Toronto clients that it's nice to actually go have lunch with them and meet them in person because I don't actually get to meet clients all that often. I spend most days just like this on the phone or on the web or on a microphone talking to clients or doing demos over the web. So it is definitely a unique world. And I think the buying community and the users have changed too. Many times they want to see you, shake your hand, look you in the eye to make that deal. And don't get me wrong, we still have that. But the vast majority are perfectly comfortable with not meeting us in person. And that's why our marketing efforts and our presence on the internet is so important because you have to have that credibility, right, to be able to sell over the internet. And then the implementation, the skill sets we get, we typically hire younger people out of school. And quite frankly, they're kind of used to that world already. So there's no retooling on our side to get them used to implementations over the web, although it's definitely a unique skill set to be able to pull that off.
So you're a cloud service provider tier 1?
Correct.
I'm aware that there's been considerable investment sometimes on the part of a provider to become a tier 1 CSP. Did you find that you needed to bolster your support? I think you're a pretty lean organization of 21, 24 people?
Yep, that's correct. And the short answer to that question is actually we didn't have to do anything. Because of our hosting business with GP and our hosting business with CRM that were already in existence, and because we've been doing remote support for so long, because keep in mind, we've been doing, we license hosted GP and CRM under SPLA or SPLA licensing. We've been doing that for so long. We'd had the recurring billing, we'd had the support organization, we had the implementation team. When we applied for CSP Tier 1, and we're actually CSP Tier 1 both in US and Canada, because we're present in the States as well, literally we had to do nothing. It was paperwork. And we passed all their little checks and things like that, and that was it. But to your point, if we hadn't had all of that, it would have been a huge effort. So
I understand.
So I wanted to get a little bit of input from you on best practices for implementations of ERP, CRM, but also some of the highlights of, let's say, integrating those kinds of solutions. But first, I wanted to talk about typical pitfalls that might hurt an implementation. Are there things that you see either coming to companies that have perhaps tried and failed on an implementation in the recent past, or things you've learned to avoid or to work around that you would identify first when it comes to the ERP and possibly CRM implementations in the cloud?
Well, I think, the marketing around a cloud-based ERP implementation is all about simplicity, speed, ease of use, and all these things. But what you have to remember is at the end of the day, you're uprooting a company's fundamental accounting system. And, in some cases, when you get into the ERP side of things, it could be warehousing, it could be manufacturing, it could be distribution, it could be a whole bunch of stuff. In our case, with a lot of clients in the professional services industry, you might have to work on dozens and small company or hundreds of users to now put in timesheets in a religious way. So at the end of the day, the complexity of an ERP implementation really hasn't changed just because of the cloud. It's just as complex and can be just as difficult as the on-premise clients that we had back in the earlier days of WebSan and the ones I worked on even prior to WebSan. The catch is, number one, you have to be very clear with your client about expectations along the way. And even, we've had some projects go off the rails over the years as well when, the clients have day jobs, right? All their employees do stuff. They're not there just waiting for a project to come and move ahead. However, our staff are dedicated to doing nothing but. And trying to facilitate a client to understand that they're going to have to free up their employees' time to work on things, that hasn't changed a bit, whether it be a multi-billion-dollar SAP implementation or a couple $1,000 ERP implementation. It's the same philosophy. And so I think the marketing, as I was alluding to earlier, the marketing saying it's so much easier and faster, et cetera, has misled some people into not understanding really what can still be involved in even a migration from QuickBooks to GP or NAV or moving from Salesforce to Dynamics CRM or anything like that. There can still be complexities, there can still be challenges, and companies need to understand that. And I think that some partners also might underestimate some of the challenges along the project timelines and what can go wrong and how you have to be flexible with your clients and sort of build that into your budget and build that into your timeline as well. I don't think, in the history of our company, we may have had, how would I say this, all our implementations go really well, but I don't think we've ever had one that went perfectly, if you know what I mean. And a couple obviously off the rails and stuff like that, but that's fairly normal in our business because it is complex stuff that we're doing, right?
When you're in competitive situations, I imagine you talk to companies that have been hearing a range of different kinds of promises or different kinds of perspectives from different vendors. Is there something that you think that you do that helps when you do win that these companies are responding to and what they hear from you? I mean, I ask because from your last question, I hear trying to keep things in a very realistic sense and not maybe overselling the prospects of what the cloud can really do. I don't know. Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, it's funny, back in the early days of selling, there's sort of this fear-based philosophy, and I studied, I already told you my degree's in chemical engineering, and that sort of personality doesn't lend itself to sales in any way, shape, and form, because I'm more analytical than anything. But when I first got into sales, I took a lot of training, and also some neuro-linguistic programming training, which really ties into people's emotions and how you sell, and I still use those theories today. So it's perfectly fine to do some fear-based selling, if you will, about the challenges and things like that. But on the other hand, you have to have the answer to those questions. And that's, I think, at the end of the day, what we provide. And quite frankly, the buyers of today have already navigated the myriad of different licenses that Microsoft offers and all these different flavors and twists and open versus CSP and volume and all this garbage. But at the end of the day, they really want someone to give them an honest answer. And I think my long-winded yet straightforward answer to your question is I have always found personally that honesty is the best policy. And I know it sounds cliche, but literally I'm on with a guy yesterday or a prospect yesterday, and they're looking at Dynamics CRM and they're looking at marketing automation and ERP. And I had to stop the conversation and say, you know what? You have absolutely no reason to buy our CRM system. You need a marketing system and you need an ERP. And they'd met with multiple vendors and no one had told them that. And I was able to explain why, and I'd love to sell them some stuff, but they don't need it. They need an ERP system, I can see that, and they need a marketing automation system, and I can see that. But do you need a pure CRM system? No. All they do is send out emails to market and get people to sign up to their newsletter and then come into a spa. So they were shocked and they were appreciative of that honesty, and whether we'll close the deal or not, I don't know. But that has really been, for some larger deals and smaller deals that we've won over the years, and I've gone back many moons later and kind of asked why us, that has been the number one reason, is our approach to selling is somewhat unique and very open and honest.
Another issue that you hear about a lot with when there are problems in projects is changes in scope. Do you see that a lot? Do you agree? And what's a best practice that you would recommend for reining in scope?
So we see it literally every day. It is almost human nature to sign something that says fixed fee and try to jam everything you can through that hole. And I don't fault clients for that. That's sort of what we anticipate. But that being said, we've been doing this for a long time. And so we have what I would say is contractual paragraphs in our agreement that kind of address these things very explicitly with real life examples. So, and even when we do a kickoff meeting, that's actually one of the things we bring up is there will be changes in scope. And quite frankly, we're not going to nickel and dime the client, but we will be smart about it. And if something adds enough complexity or enough time to the engagement, then yeah, you know what, we have to be paid for it, or you're just not going to do it. And I have actually, in partnerships with other partners, not necessarily Microsoft ones, but in other third-party applications we've sort of latched on to GP over the years, I've seen other partners handle this particular issue horrifically badly and lose clients and getting huge disagreements with clients over this exact issue. And it's just because, in my opinion, they don't address this right up front and give the client real practical examples that they can get their head around to understand what they will pay for and what they won't pay for. And I'd say that's something that over the years we've gotten pretty good at. And we're reasonable. We don't charge for everything because at the end of the day, their happiness and content is sort of the number one priority. But it is definitely a challenge. There's no question. It's a challenge with every project. So
you've spoken and written quite a bit about projects that require integrating CRM and ERP, and I know you offer both and you integrate them frequently. A couple of questions. First, I was curious, what are the most common scenarios you face in those projects in terms of dealing with, and you touched on this before, but dealing with having at least one existing system in place and the current state that you find in client systems and how that influences your approach?
The current state we find in almost all client systems is a train wreck. I'll give you an example from a project we're kicking off just tomorrow even. This client has, they're an accounting firm, and they have 3 different billing systems. And, they were really struggling with how to do the data cleanup. And through the different integrations we've done over the years and faced these types of scenarios, we were able to come up with a solution for them that actually is very clean. It doesn't require them to blow their brains out too much on their data cleanup, because the one rule I've learned over the years is if a client hasn't kept their data clean, having an event like a new implementation of a new system, it may affect that to a degree, but there's nothing behaviorally that's going to change to suddenly and miraculously clean everything up and be perfect. It's just not going to happen. So instead we approach it that, okay, if it is, give it your best shot, but in the end of the day, if it's still dirty, here's what we're going to do to still achieve a successful outcome. And I think that's one of the things that just kind of comes with experience, both with the software you're dealing with and with doing integrations over the years. Some clients really just want simple integration. They just want to share the customers back and forth between CRM and their ERP. Others want full-blown project accounting integrations. We've done, obviously, sales integration, service integration, maintenance integration, a whole bunch of different modules. We've completely done custom entities in CRM and integrated those with Dynamics GP. So It really depends on the client, but the data is never clean, and that's something that has to be dealt with. And again, that's one of those things similar to change in scope. You need to deal with that up front rather than wait until the client gives you a file and suddenly you're shocked to find that it's a disaster. Well, they're always a disaster, so you just sort of plan ahead on that.
Do you have sort of a go-to set of possible options of how companies can handle that? If they have a bunch of really messy legacy data, do you tend to find yourselves trying to push them to one particular way of handling that? For example, data warehouse or some other way to sort of keep that legacy data legacy?
Yeah, it really, I don't think there's a go-to strategy. There's go-to strategy on different tools that we would use to clean up the data. Even CRM itself has a decent duplicate detection engine that you can kind of run data through. Heck, even Excel has that. But it really comes down to, I guess, the state of the union, so to speak. Like, how bad is it? And how many systems are we integrating to? If you're just doing a data conversion from an ERP to, say, a QuickBooks to GP or some other ERP to GP or NAV, how really bad is it? And we've actually seen some clients, quite frankly, we've just left, if they own the legacy system, they will leave that up and running to be able to reference historical information, and maybe we'll bring some key field over into the ERP that ties it back to that system and for reference, but that's it. It's so bad you can't even bring it in. You actually have to almost start from scratch with the data, or pieces and parts of the data, and then bring that in. So we've kind of seen that extreme, and then we've seen some clients that, the data goes in fine, it's got its relationships, a little bit of cleanup, but not too bad. So I wish there were a go-to strategy, but it's sort of a case-by-case basis, really, unfortunately.
In terms of actual tools, Microsoft has for a long time offered a connector, which I believe is going to start losing support in the near future. What do you look to actually tie the systems together, and what are you looking toward in the future?
So my speech regarding that connector has always been to clients, you get what you pay for, and it's free. So we have used it, no question, for very limited, what I would call, integrations, just because it's limited in its scope of what can be done. We've run the gamut from using third-party tools like Scribe and Smart Connect to also just 100% custom developing integrations as well. And there's pros and cons, and we've even got hybrid where we've half used Smart Connect for certain straight out-of-the-box objects, and we've used our own custom integrations for, say, unique entities in CRM, etc. So we've got a few tools at our disposal. Another company we own actually does integration to Canadian border services for customs declarations for importers into Canada. And so we've got quite a robust integration engine there that we actually have leveraged over the years with our Dynamics GP integration. So ironically, we almost even started as an integration company before we got into Dynamics. So some interesting background there that's helped us, I think, get through some of these crazy issues over the years.
I wanted to turn just a bit into talking about cloud technology and looking ahead with it. As you think about where cloud capabilities are heading for deploying ERP, and maybe GP specifically in this case, and deploying CRM, what would you like to see, let's say, improve with the ability to deploy these systems in hosted environments or in public cloud environments? Are there particular capabilities that you're thinking about?
Wow, I've got a lot of answers to that question, unfortunately. So I guess I could take it kind of product by product. When you look at GP, let's all admit, right? It's written on Dexterity. It's a little old. They keep adding some new features and functions, but it's a very difficult product to host. It's got a lot of pieces and parts. It requires a lot of horsepower on the back end. It's not Azure friendly when you look at sort of a decent uptime SLA with clients. And I know there are partners hosting on Azure. We don't. We have 2 data centers here in Ontario that we host GP for. So I'm not optimistic that anything's going to change on the GP front, especially given Microsoft's sort of investment in that product these days. However, when it comes to looking at CRM and NAV and O365 and tools that integrate, either out of the box they integrate or their third-party tools, everything is becoming easier, I'd say, from a partner standpoint. Easier also translates probably to less professional services for a partner, which obviously makes doing business a little more difficult. But the simplicity at which things talk in the Microsoft space is pretty amazing, actually. And the enhancements they're doing to CRM and NAV integration are pretty impressive. And I think when you look at the landscape and where things are headed, and quite frankly, I'm not even sure you need to read tea leaves anymore as much as Microsoft kind of smacks you in the face with where they're headed. I think that in and of itself and selling all these products together and integrating them all together, I think that's the huge selling point of what Microsoft is offering today. And being able to do it as a partner without a ton of overhead and a ton of extra pain and suffering is actually a huge advantage for us. So the landscape is, I think, headed towards offerings of fully integrated systems, systems that talk seamlessly and with little effort. I wouldn't say they're going to get to the point where they self-implement or clients will implement themselves. Some try, but it's definitely becoming easier to get these systems to talk, which is, in my opinion, it's a great advantage.
Easier to get them to talk, perhaps easier to, well, maybe GP is not a good example, but easier to get them to run in different kind of cloud environments in efficient ways, and maybe, and I guess even in the last week with the Dynamics 365 announcement and the direction that the products seem to be going, easier to just simply put them up into a public cloud environment or even a private cloud environment and make them work without as much difficulty.
Well, that's the thing, right? And we've become somewhat of a Swiss Army knife in that respect. So if a client comes to us, and I guess I'll use Nav as the simplest example. If a client wants Nav on premise, not a problem. We'll sell you Nav if you want to go that way. If you want Nav on a private cloud, you know what? We've got data centers here in Ontario. We can do that for you. If you want Nav on Azure, we've got either a straight Azure deployment that we'd license through SPLA, or we can do a managed service offering with Microsoft, which is a bit more vanilla and maybe appropriate for smaller customers. So, even if I just look at Nav as a product, I've got 4 different ways to deploy that, probably at 4 different price points even. And so trying to steer that ship and trying to educate clients as to what is possible and then what's the best solution for them, what I found is, A, it somewhat overcomplicates the sale, but B, if I go back to that comment earlier about being honest with people, I think what they really appreciate at the end of the day is, you know what, let's find the best option for you. Here are the pros and cons of each, and we can support it either way you go. It doesn't make any difference to us. Because at the end of the day, our differentiator isn't necessarily the software we sell and the fact we sell all these integrated things that look cool and work great together, but it's really our service and what we provide in the professional services world and how we service our clients and keep them happy. You can go to a ton of different places and buy the same software. It's a matter of the partner that makes that different, in addition to what we specialize in and the different vertical industries that we focus on.
Yeah, one more question on the cloud and specifically Azure. I just am curious for you as a Microsoft partner, are there aspects of Azure from a technology perspective that you are paying special attention to in terms of skills that your team needs to have, you believe, going forward, or particular, I guess, products or services within Azure that you think are going to be particularly important?
Yeah, so right now I can't really talk to Azure all that much. We don't have a ton of experience in it. We're only really now doing the Nav managed service offering that's obviously on Azure with Microsoft. We do have a plethora of demo environments that run on Azure, and so far I'm impressed with the service, but we've not done a ton of work. I will tell you the one thing that does interest us is Active Directory integration between, say, a private cloud, Microsoft's Azure cloud, Microsoft Office 365, and getting all that single sign-on to work together is a pretty amazing piece of technology. And then again, we can offer things to our clients that are hybrid clouds, which is a mix of all the above, but still give them that single sign-on ability. I mean, that's some pretty cool stuff, especially even for small businesses to be able to do that. So we haven't gotten terribly into Azure yet. I would predict in the next 12 to 18 months we'll probably get more into it and have an offering for our clients on that. But we've traditionally had our own hosting environment, so we've kind of stuck to that for now.
Where are you with the Nav managed service offering at this point?
We've got right now a few clients on that live. But we are just really getting started with Navision. Although from a marketing standpoint, my team has done, I think it's something like 35 different videos now that are published on our website regarding Nav functionality and different modules and how they all work and things like that. So we've got enough experience in Nav to start implementing it. We've got some good references built up, and we're growing. We still to this day we get a ton of prospects from our website. So we're I would suspect our Nav practice is going to explode. I mean, even right now I'm working on numerous prospects for it. So we're excited actually.
That is interesting on the nav side, and I would just add on the with regard to my sort of Azure question, I would 100% agree with you that some of the hybrid options and some of the services that enable hybrid architectures are, to me, some of the coolest stuff that you can do with Azure. Even though it's probably some of the trickier things to do, but also some of the cooler things.
Yeah, and like I said, I joke that this is an interesting time in my own personal career in working with Microsoft, because I'm genuinely impressed with the technology they're bringing to the table. And it's technology, for lack of a better term, I grew up selling GP, right? And GP is a great application, but when you just look at it and you compare it to CRM and O365 and Power BI and Nav, it's not even in the same ballpark, just from a look and feel, right? So for a guy that grew up selling GP, now selling all this stuff, oh man, this is a piece of cake relative to what I was doing before. And we've got our own solutions that we bolted on to GP that really made it sing and dance quite well. And again, that was always easier to sell than just the GP core engine itself. But this stuff, and to your point, the things that enable single sign-on, even with clients' local systems through Azure Active Directory and all these things, is some really, really amazing technology that they're doing. So.
You mentioned Office 365, and that was one area that I did want to get a little more input from you on. What is the relationship right now for your clients between Office 365 and Microsoft's ERP offerings?
So what I have found, Office 365 is sort of like the fries on the side of the lunch or the cheeseburger. I know some partners, I guess, are leading with Office 365 and going that route. We've always found that the audience that you're selling an ERP to and a CRM to and an Office 365 to are typically different groups in a company. But I will say this. We started our official CSP Tier 1, I think we sold our first licenses in January. And we have over 600 seats sold, and it's, just July 7th? So our Office 365 practice has literally exploded. And it's just, do you want fries with that? It's not, hey, we're going to try to sell you Office 365 and OPS. Do you want CRM and Nav or what have you, or GP? It's, we do hardcore ERP, difficult implementations. We do all this cloud stuff. You might want CRM. And oh, by the way, if you just want one throat to choke for for your Office stuff as well, because the IT guys or girls are in the meeting, then, oh, hey, wait a second. We can go to one place and get all these things. This is amazing. Mm-hmm. So, and the CSP, quite frankly, the margins in CSP are good enough. You have some room to play with too. So Office 365 has become really a great product for us to get even further entrenched in clients' infrastructure. And the other thing too is, when you're selling GP or you're selling Navision, you're selling to a very small microcosm of the client. You might have 5 GP users and the company has 2,000 employees. Right? Well, now when you're selling Office 365, you're selling to the 2,000 employees too, which is a huge game changer for us. So that's been really exciting as well.
Isn't Office 365 really at the core of every CSP bundled offering?
Yes, it is. But when you look back at sort of our approach, it's always ERP, CRM first. And the CSP license ability allows us to tack on Office 365. I don't have to sell Office 365. I can just sell you CRM. However, I'm not going to sell you CRM without having Outlook. And oh, by the way, most people aren't current on their Outlook. So, hey, you know what? We can sell you either Outlook by itself. We can sell Office 365. Because keep in mind, the conversation really isn't Office 365. The conversation is Microsoft Online Services. Because I can, kind of like ordering sushi, I can order the bento box, which is Office 365. Or I can mix and match and do things specific to that client. And quite frankly, being able to even intelligently have that conversation with the IT team at a client or with a small business client to optimize their licensing is phenomenal. And that actually even facilitates sales of other things.
So I have a question that may be a little ahead of the game here, just in terms of what's already known and what's not. But when you talk about bringing Office 365, and I have to think about this week's announcement of Dynamics 365, which isn't out yet, and it's very limited public knowledge right now. But I will ask you anyway, and maybe we'll end up not using this. But do you have a view on how that will change the same dynamic of making Office 365 a bento box or fries or the thing you lead with in the future?
Well, I think that's exactly what this is. And I mean, even though I think there was an announcement today and they said, oh, we're not naming this Dynamics 365 to link it to Office 365. Well, come on. Like, was I born yesterday? Give me a break. Their goal, Microsoft isn't stupid. They're highly intelligent people, and they're wanting to push as much O365 stuff as they possibly can. So why not link it to something with a bit more capability, bundle it all together? I've been actually struggling with trying to come up with an offering for us that is O365 Nav CRM kind of all together. But there's so many variables in the licensing, it's almost impossible to come up with something that's just here. Here's the bento box that has all this stuff, and here's one price. Well, okay, but if you didn't want the sushi, that's actually going to deduct $5.95. It's some tough, complicated math to get into with clients. So I'm excited on the one hand that they've tried to bundle this together. I think the proof is going to be in the pudding to see what they really come out with. We're actually, in my opinion, quite well positioned for this, given the fact we've got the managed service Nav offering. Madeira is based on Nav. Who knows what price point Madeira is going to come in at? I have no idea. Are we going to be able to make money at it? Maybe. Who knows? What's the professional services budget look like on a project like that? And in the CRM world, we sell Splosh CRM to 1 to 4 users because you can't get CRM online for under 5 users. And I'll tell you right now, there's no professional services in that market. There's almost none. So then how does that business look in the Madeira world with Office 365, et cetera? And who knows, Dan, maybe to your point, then we maybe shift gears and start focusing more on leading with Office 365 for a certain segment of the market. But at the end of the day, we're not going to commoditize ourselves. We need to add value as a partner. We need to have intellectual property and something special that we do, and we feel we've got that, and we'll continue to build on that. And, if Office 365 adds into that or facilitates it, then great. But if it doesn't, so be it. But like I said, we just started adding the fries to the side of the burger, and suddenly the fries are bigger than the burger, so, who cares? If it makes us money and it's manageable and it works strategically in our direction, then I have no issue. We have no issue selling it, right?
I think that is all I had in terms of questions for today. Dan, did you have anything else?
Well, we were going to ask about the difference, perhaps, in enthusiasm and end-user buy-in around a CRM project than ERP. Just curious if you've observed any difference. Do you tend to find more buy-in with CRM, more excitement?
Oh, 100%. The only time you won't get a lot of excitement about a CRM project is when you walk in and all the sales executives are on Post-it notes and napkins reporting their sales prospects. But CRM in its nature is, how do I put this? It's somewhat of a less risky endeavor in that, if CRM goes off the rails a little bit, it's a very simple system to configure. It's a less heavy application when it comes to, at least compared to GP, when it comes to customizing it, etc. So really, our enthusiasm, our ability to sort of flex with the customer, and therefore I think the customer's enthusiasm for the project tends to be much higher than a traditional ERP. An ERP project is typically a lot of heavy lifting, it's a lot of work. The ROI typically isn't seen on day one. The ROI might be down the road. So yeah, I guess the short answer is, generally speaking, there is more enthusiasm for a CRM project on the client side. And again, it's a flashier application than what we were used to with GP. When you talk about these different components together, i.e. O365, GP or Nav, and CRM, and how they talk, that's a really exciting project for clients, and people get right behind that almost immediately. So that's exciting for us.
I do observe, too, that there is, just because you're dealing with such different segments, you talk to sales and marketing people, they're enthused as part of their jobs.
Exactly.
Whereas I don't know how excited an accountant or a dispatcher gets. So you got to wonder if it isn't the average CRM user who isn't just more enthusiastic by profession, but also they are enabled, I think, to, you can tell them, here are the KPIs, the typical improvements in, say, contacts per week, responsiveness that you can expect, whereas it's really difficult to get somebody in accounting fired up, I guess, or to tell them that this is going to be drastically different for you.
Well, it depends on the audience. We've definitely found some accounting people that get excited about accounting. But yeah, I think generally speaking, you're correct. And the only times I really find people that aren't excited about a CRM project is when the sales VP or executive is really tired of their performance and they're not getting or following up on the leads and prospects as well as they would hope, and then they shove a CRM system down their throat thinking that's going to fix anything. And so that can be a little difficult. But the good news is, at least for us, I've been personally doing CRM implementations even before I was doing ERP. So it's something that we've seen kind of a lot of different flavors of enthusiasm, and we're able to give, to your point, kind of practical examples of client successes that they've had and how it can transform your business. And quite frankly, every salesperson is enthusiastic about getting more sales. So if you tell someone, instead of just writing on your napkin, you need to now actually log into a system and update a task or what have you, they don't get excited about that, but they get excited about the prospect of following up better and increase sales, therefore increase commission, therefore buying whatever the heck else they want.
Thanks so much.
This has been the MSDW podcast. Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to be on the podcast, maybe you're an ISV with a product release, a consultant with a case study, or a VAR with a unique slant on Microsoft Dynamics product news or company direction, feel free to drop us a line. Again, I'm Jason Gumpert, editor. You can reach me, jgumpert at msdynamicsworld.com.
And I'm Dan Morneau, assistant editor. You can reach me at dmorneau at msdynamicsworld.com. That's D as in Dan, M as in Michael, AURN as in Nickel O at msdynamicsworld.com.
Until next time, we're MS Dynamics World signing off.